Hello, everyone. It is very good to see you. My name is Mark, and you probably already know that. You've probably seen me somewhere, probably signed up for something like, what does this dude Mark know? I don't know. I hope to show you a couple of things, at least tonight, around maybe growing your business. If you're looking to be strategic about growing your business and not just growing it willy-nilly, and not having it grow into something that metastasizes into something horrible, that would be ideal, right? So, very good to see you tonight. You are here for the strategic business growth multiplier, and go ahead and get that slide started. So, what I'd like to do is right out of the gate, if you could let me know who you are. Well, actually, I'll know who you are, but if you would like to let me know where you're from and what kind of business are you in. And if you only have just an idea for a business, that's okay. That's okay too. Just if you're in ideation, that's fine. Just kind of getting an idea for a business, just kind of looking for some ideas to get started as you head into 2026. Tomorrow, I have a business, another class coming up called the Strategic Planning for Business Owners, and that one's almost halfway sold out. I'm actually surprised. Um, I'm not surprised because given the time of year, it's pretty typical for people to start strategic planning. But so again, just let me know where you're from. Let's see, Kimberly, Philpott. Let's see here. You are from Edmonton with a health and wellness online business. Excellent, very good. Well, glad to have you join us here today, Kimberly. And then don't have anybody else saying anything just yet. Oh, here we go. Nay, you're from Western Australia, jewelry design. It's got to be really early there. Is it Nay? Yeah, that's got it. Western Australia. My goodness, was that Perth? I'm thinking that's Perth. Okay. I've been to Australia. It's been a minute since I've been there, so glad to have you both here. It looks like we've got people from all over the place, literally opposite ends of the globe. It's just kind of cool. Very good. All right, yeah. Okay, very good. I was thinking that way. All right, we're gonna get going. So again, for those of you who are just joining, we've got a lot to cover, and I want to get you guys out of here with a lot of stuff that is actionable. And I know I get a lot of people who they'll come back and say, "Wow, that was really great." If you're just joining us, let me know where you're from and what kind of business idea that you have, so I can make it relevant to you. So that way, if you've got questions or if you've got different things, as different things come up through the slides, that I can make it more relevant to you and your business. All right, so let's get to it. Couple quick things in terms of housekeeping. First and foremost, if you've got questions, put them in the comments. I will get back to them. I'm gonna kind of keep going, and there's natural breakpoints, and I'll check the comments section. I'll try to keep up with them. A couple questions I always get along the way is, will there be a replay? Yes, we will send that to you in your email. So if you signed up through Eventbrite, you will get this. This is also being broadcast to my YouTube page, but for the people who follow me there. But if you are interested, and you would like and you'd like to sign up for the class tomorrow, which is a strategic planning session, which is similar to this one here. This is actually foundational for the stuff we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to get a little bit more into the weeds on certain things tomorrow in terms of strategic planning. But if you are interested in that, go to Eventbrite and sign up there. Let's see, we've got again, is that Nay? Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you, Nay. And then being a friend. Oh, hey, Frimpong. It's good to see you again. I think you're getting your frequent flyer miles racking up. Okay, very good. It's good to see you again. Life insurance agent in Delaware. All right. All right. So what we're going to be talking about here is a strategic approach to managing your life and business. So what I want you to do, it's good to see you again. So, and the strategic approach to managing your life and business, the thing is, we're going to be covering a lot of stuff very high level, but we're going to get into some of the granular details. But this is not a granular sort of thing because it's strategic. Strategic by its very nature is broad scope. So you have to recognize that you guys and gals all have different and individual things that you're great at. So what I want you to do is just take that metaphorical planning table, that war planning table, and just kind of clear it all off and put out there what you're great at. And I want you to focus on your strengths as you head into 2026. Don't look for all the ways that you can, fill in the chinks in your armor. This is where you're going to look for other people to help you do that. Okay. So this is again, this is the difference between being a strategist versus a tactician. I'm not a tactician. A tactician is good in a very specific way around, like, again, I like using like very specific types of attorneys, very specific types of tax accountants, very specific types of subcontractors that have very specific skill sets. Why is that? Because I rely on them to be great at what they're great at. And if they can't do the job, I'm going to find someone else who's great at what they're great at. But as a strategist, I have to recognize, I have to know a little bit about their job, right? And this is why I have a lot of knowledge in very different areas, so I can be an effective strategist for people who are generally in the service industries. I really like working with people who sell to other people, specifically service industries. I like working with contractors. I've worked with fractional CFOs, fractional CMOs, chief financial officers, chief marketing officers. I've worked for all different types of entrepreneurs who really like working in serving other clients, specifically, like I said, in the service industries, even restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. So if that's not necessarily you, that's okay, because this approach will work. I promise you. It has worked across literally dozens and dozens of different types of businesses and industries, with literally hundreds of types of businesses. So I'm going to show you how this all lays out. Specifically, who is this for? It's for established businesses or established business owners with employees. Now, if you are not that, right, or you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a business yet, that's okay. But knowing you're probably going to be bringing other people on board, whether that's employees, whether that's subcontractors, whatever that is, recognizing the need to bring in other people. This is not going to be super helpful. I'm not saying it's not going to be worth it, but I'm just letting you know it's not going to be for the solopreneur who wants to stay that way. If you're trying to grow or you're trying to scale, you can grow by yourself to a certain point. You cannot scale at all. Because again, the difference between growth is kind of linear, scaling is exponential. So there's a major difference between growth and scaling. And scaling is, when you bring others in to your business, it has an automatic scaling effect on your business because they bring other people into the organization with them by virtue of who they know, right? Like, you just think about it. Like, think about the people. Let's say that your neighbor is a 17-year-old young man and he gets his first job, right? Who's going to know about where he works? Well, his parents and likely everyone in his family. And they're, of course, they're going to learn about that business a little bit, right? That's why I'm saying, just by bringing, even though that 17-year-old and maybe he's told his friends, so now that business has increased its exposure by a dozen times just by virtue of bringing in the 17-year-old, right? Now imagine if they brought in someone who is not 17 years old, but 37 and has been in business for 20 years. And they've established themselves as someone who's trustworthy, someone who's a leader in their community. Do you think that person has an ability to scale the business even more just by virtue of who they know? Yeah, it makes sense, right? So this is why I want you to think about being strategic in terms of who you bring in to your organization. Because if you're not strategic about this, and if you're not even really thinking about it, you're going to have difficulty growing, and it will be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to scale. All right, so I just want you to think about that. All right, so for those of you who are just coming in, let me know where you're from and what kind of business that you're in. So, all right, so let's get to one quick thing, and I mentioned this on every webinar. I recognize that at the end of these sessions, almost everybody says, "Oh man, I took a bunch of notes. That was so great," which is humbling, and I certainly appreciate that. I mean, I give a lot of information, so it doesn't surprise me that people are taking lots of notes. But the one thing I want you to know is I want you to make the difference between seeking to understand versus seeking knowledge to actually take action on. So at the end of this, all right, what I want you to do is just write in right now that I commit to taking action on at least one thing. Just write down, just so I know that you guys are paying attention, just write down, I commit, right? That's all you need to say, right? It's I commit to taking action on one specific thing, at least one thing or two things. I'm not asking you to take action on 17 things, because that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking to take specific actions on here. So you're a quiet group tonight. No one's saying I commit, right? I'm waiting for you. I'm looking, right? But this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you guys to commit to taking action on at least one thing that we talk about tonight. All right, so that's what I'm looking for. And because at the end, I want to know what it is that you're going to take action on. And this is about how I can help hold you accountable a little bit. All right, so AB, you're good. All right, thank you for committing. We got one commitment. All right, so what I'm going to say is at the end here, when we get to the end, and by the way, like I said, if you're coming in a little bit later, you are going to get the replay on this. All right, so let's get to it. Let's get to the agenda. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about the systems that your business is going to need in order for you to grow and to scale. Then we're going to be talking about the psychology. So this approach that I call this it's basically the S&P approach, the systems and psychology. Both things are necessary. You've got to have systems and you've got to understand psychology, because if you are too heavy on one or the other, your business is still going to struggle. So systems and then psychology. And then we're going to be talking about the 4 core functions of business. We're going to talk about scaling the business. And then finally, we're going to be talking about different resources that will set you up for success. So again, when we're taking this business approach, again, this is the S&P approach. It's systems and psychology. And first and foremost, we're going to unpack the systems. So as we talk about systems, the systems are everything that I wrote about in this book that I published back in May. And this is called the Time Wealthy Advantage. I know there's quite a few people joining me from out of the US tonight. So if you would like a copy of this, the best bet for you is to go to Amazon and order it directly from Amazon. That's going to be your best bet, because they have a distribution system that I just can't even hope to replicate. That'll be your best bet to get your hands on the book if you're interested. If you are in the US and you would like a copy that I can sign and send to you, just go to strategicboardroom.com, and there is right on the very front page. It's like literally the first thing that pulls up. There's a little button right in the middle of the screen. You can just click that. But I'm not here to promote the book. I'm not here to push that. I just want to give it some context so you understand the Viper methodology. This Viper framework is really a framework for life. It's a life and business framework on how to set up a business and a life that's by design, that's what you want. Okay, so let's unpack that. The Viper framework stands for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. So if you guys have seen me talk before, AB, I know you were in the last session. So this is going to be a little bit repetitive, but we're going to go a little bit more granular on a couple of different things. I know you were in the marketing magic one. We're not going to get super detailed in the infrastructure piece like we did on the last one, but there's certain pieces of this that I really feel are very important, especially if you're trying to grow your business strategically. So let's unpack this, starting with vision. Vision it's broken down into 2 parts. And vision stands for both personal vision and business vision. So it's broken out into personal vision and business vision. Personal vision is going to ask you a very basic question. Where do you want to go? Okay, Nay, where do you want to go? Kimberly, where do you want to go? Okay, AB, where do you want to go? Like that's really, really important, because when you start thinking about this, and I want you to think about like, okay, well, how does this have to do anything with my business at all? It has everything to do with your business, because if you were defining your life that had nothing to do with income generation, now you're not creating a life that exists to serve the business. I'm just letting you know, like that sucks. Like it just, when you create this life that exists to serve your business, that's because you created a business vision and never gave any thought to a personal vision, right? So really, I want you to define your personal vision up front, because all decisions are going to be run through that lens. Then you can start thinking about a business vision and saying, okay, cool. Now that we've defined what this ideal life from day to day, you wake up with $30 million or 30 million pounds or whatever your local currency is, whichever stands for a lot of money for you, 30 million euros. And you wake up, what would your day-to-day life look like if it wasn't defined by income generation? If you didn't have to worry about, okay, fine, you go out and buy all the bougie things, but what would your life look like, right? And that's where you start to think about your business vision, and that's how you're going to get there. So the danger in this, right, with not ever really giving any consideration to a personal vision, is the danger in creating a business vision before you ever create a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And it's interesting because, I used to think back in my 20s, 100 years ago, And I used to think, man, yeah, I've read about this stuff. Yeah, let me make 50 grand a month. Let me make 100 grand a month. And then I'll worry about that, better life thing later. The problem was it never materialized that way. Not for me anyway. But the really more interesting thing is I have sat in masterminds, I've sat in in conferences with people who like legitimately, and this is not aggrandizing, but these were people who were legitimately netting 6 and 7 figures per month. And they were miserable because they were confusing achievement for fulfillment and they weren't ever there. So all I'm going to say, we're going to just spend another minute or two on the personal vision piece and then we'll get into the business vision piece, but just take the time to define that personal vision. So that personal vision, one of the ways I like to do that is to come up with a 100th birthday speech. And, who would you want to be there? And specifically, what would you say, right? And or you could think about what you would want others to say to you after you got done speaking, right? You're turning 100 years old. You're going to get up there and make this big speech. What would you want others to say to you after you're done speaking? And what would be the message that you would want them to carry outside the room to other people? Okay. Now, for some of you, you might be thinking, well, geez, I'm 25 years old. I can't think about being 100. That's so far removed from my reality. I'm 53. And this is, by the way, where you say, like, wow, you don't look anywhere near 53. You could put that in the comments. It's totally fine. But realistically, even me thinking that me being 100 years old, I'm like, I don't know. It's even that, it's still far removed. But what you could do is use another milestone, use another marker in your life, right? So for me, it might be, instead of 53, it might be turning 60. Right? That could be a milestone. Or maybe you've got kids who are just getting into high school and you'd say, well, when they graduate high school, right? That sort of thing, right? So there's certain milestones in your life that, maybe it's your 10-year high school reunion, right? For some of you, you might be in your early 20s and that could be a milestone for you. So whatever those milestone events could be for you, I want you to think of what that could be. So use that to create and help craft your personal vision. Now let's look at business vision. So the business vision. So is everybody with me? Maybe. Hey, that wasn't that funny. I mean, I don't think I at least look my age. But here's the thing. So now that we've talked about personal vision, now let's talk about business vision. So I'd like to hear, does anybody been working on a personal vision? Is someone from 1 to 10, go ahead and answer in the comments. From 1 to 10, 1 meaning not very clear at all to 10 very, very clear. How clear are you in your personal vision? And I'm going to throw this caveat in there. It can't be more than a 5 if it's not written down. If it's not written down, it's not more than a 5. And I'm just telling you this having worked with literally hundreds of business owners who said that they're super clear. I asked them if it was written down and they said no. And then they couldn't really articulate it really worth a crap, right? It was all about very, very, how do I want to say this? Very comfort language like financial freedom or generational wealth is the phrases that I would often hear, but they would never really could get me any more specific than that. I just want to do whatever I want to do. Okay. Do you want to hold a baby shark naked while you jump out of an airplane? They're like, well, no. Okay. Right. I mean, so we can take that off the list, right? So it's really about specificity. And I really, so AB is saying 2. Okay. You got some work to do. Right. That's good. That's good. Listen, it's not a 1. So you're doing something well. You're doing something well, right? So take the time to really commit to writing this stuff down and being really specific about what you want your personal vision to look like. Okay. Rest of you are kind of quiet tonight. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you are from 1 to 10, or maybe you're thinking about it. Some of you might be on your phones. I recognize it's kind of hard to answer when you're on your phones. 4. Nay says 4 started a vision board. Okay, a vision board is great. And here's the thing that for me, I think a vision board is fine. But there's something different for me, something intrinsically different for me from a vision board. And if a vision board is your thing, Noi, I'm sorry, is it Nay or Noi? I think it is Nay. Anyway, yes, Nay. So you started a vision board, Nay, and that's totally fine. I'm just saying, like, when there's something really powerful about the descriptive word, and when you literally take here's a piece of my vision here that I have written down that I just decided to pull out an index card, and you are saying it correctly. Thank you. So Nay, that's the thing that I like to write things down, and specifically so that way I can articulate exactly what it is I'm looking for, rather than just, in my mind, this is just for me, rather than creating an art project. Because sometimes the photos that I would find just really didn't satisfy what it was that I was looking for, right? And admittedly, I'm more of a kinesthetic learner anyway. So for me, like right now, I'm in a PhD program and for organizational psychology, and every reading assignment is online. So guess what I have to do? I have to print it all off. So my printer is like working overtime, and I have to, I have to print it. I have to underline. I've got little tabs on things. That's how I learn. So that's how it just, for me, it's just better for me to come up with those sort of things. You might be more visual, and if it is, that's totally fine. I just want to let other people know that there's other ways to do it. A vision board could be one way, but I personally like things to be written down. That's just my appropriate. That's just appropriate for me. So AB is saying, that's my problem. I don't write it down, so I forget from time to time. And that's the thing, is because our memories will get tricky, right? Like we say, like, oh, that's something that I wanted. Like, for example, one of the things that I started doing is I started keeping an achievement journal. And now achievement journal was really, really helpful for me, because I felt like at the end of each year, I'm like, man, what did I actually accomplish? Well, this year, I mean, I accomplished a lot. I started a PhD program. I wrote and published 5 books: The Time Wealthy Advantage, and the accounting guide, the sales guide, the lead generation guide, and the strategic one sheets. Those were 5 separate books that I published. Published the first one in May, published the others in June. I read, I'm almost done with my 42nd book. So reading, right? So I read 42 different books this year. So I've got a lot done, and I know all this because I was just reviewing, prior to jumping on here, reviewing all of my achievements that I did for 2025, and all of that, in addition to just a bunch of other things that I did, listen to other books and put out courses and different things. So I feel like I had an extremely productive year, and I'm feeling pretty good about it, right? Things are great at home, and just everything is really, really good. Like, life is just truly, truly good. And I thank God for that, because my faith is also very, very strong. So these are all things that I have started paying attention to. An achievement journal is a great way to also keep track of how you're doing on your personal vision. So, really, really good. So if you don't have an achievement journal, and that can just be something that's really simple, just a simple book, something like this. This is not my achievement journal. This is just a book that I have that someone gave me, and I haven't really figured out what I want to use it for yet, but it's a great little book, and something as simple as that is something that you can keep an achievement journal with. All right. So let's get into the 3 C's of business vision. 3 C's of business vision are, now we're going to get into some more of the bigger picture stuff as it relates to business. So when it comes to the 3 C's of business vision, those are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. So this is really important to get dialed in, especially if you are looking to grow your business. If you're looking to grow and expand your business, here's the interesting thing. Whenever I get hired in as a strategist, or I get brought into an organization because they're having issues, or their revenues are declining, or their revenues are flat, or their profitability is having some struggles, they're not effective in their advertising, or they're having personnel issues, any sort of issues that I can see, I go back to these 3 things. And not every issue, not saying all of them, but many, many issues are coming from the fact that they are not clear on one or all of these things. Okay, so I'm just telling you, the more clear you can be in these 3 areas, it's going to make your business run that much smoother. So especially if you're looking to grow, and especially if you're looking to scale. So let's talk about this, starting with core purpose. Core purpose asks the question specifically, what business are you in specifically, and what problems do you solve? Again, specifically. So, like, for example, AB, you had mentioned that you're in insurance, right? And I think you might have said life insurance, right? So you specifically sell life insurance. Okay. So Abina, if you are selling life insurance, that's great. Right. And I would say, okay, well, I know that there's IULs, Index Universal Life. There's whole life policies. There's term life policies. There's variable universal life policies. Which of those do you represent? Maybe one, maybe all, right? But do you sell all of those equally across the board? Well, no, that wouldn't be appropriate, right? It just depends on what the individual needs, right? So maybe you only sell whole life policies and you use them for the infinite banking concept, right? It's basically where you can grow your and I have several specific policies under whole life that grows my cash value of my cash that's held in there, specifically for that purpose. I don't really hold it for the cash, or I don't really hold it for the life insurance. The life insurance is kind of a benefit, right? But it's only specific types of insurance companies that do that, right? So let's say, for argument's sake, Obina does this, right? And now she knows her core purpose is really, really specific, right? What business are you in and what problems do you specifically solve? And it's important that you're really specific in your answers. If someone comes to Abina and says, "Hey, can you give me a quote for car insurance?" It's not really what I do, right? I can find someone who can get that for you, but staying in your lane. And the reason for that is because you start to occupy that mental real estate of people that are around you. And this is really, really critical, because the people who wander are the ones who struggle. The people who never pick a lane, the people who don't differentiate in terms of what it is they do and what they will obnoxiously not do, those are the ones who struggle. So, core purpose has to be well defined. Next is core values. Core values is specifically what matters to you about this business and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business. And this is, again, core values is one of those things that people often I can see like their eyes roll in the back of their head like, oh, geez, here comes this squishy core value stuff. Well, I'm just telling you, you call it squishy, call it whatever you want. But the reality is the companies that have their core values well defined, they also have a very, very strong company culture. And the reason why is because they defined what the company culture is by virtue of their core values. The core values are the DNA of the company. So, and why is this important? Because the company culture and the company brand are inextricably linked. You can't unbake that cake. So if you have an unhealthy culture, what is that saying about your brand? Has anybody ever worked here? It's kind of a redundant question because we've all worked at a very toxic company. But if you've never worked for a toxic company, I highly recommend it, at least for a day, right? And I have worked at those toxic places and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of here. So, like those places where you're like wondering if you're ever going to see your family again, right? You're just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I just can't wait to get home. Yeah, I've worked at those places because the company culture was absolutely terrible. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Vina. So this is why I'm saying, like, I want you to think about your core values. And again, where do these core values come from? Well, they come from you because your business is just an extension of you, right? That's where I want you to think, well, if your business is an extension of you, okay, that's fine. So if your business is an extension of you and your core values would obviously come from you, well, how do I define my core values? Well, think about this in the context of the extremes in your life. So maybe at one point in time you had a friend that was heading down a path that you just couldn't follow, right? Have we ever had that? Like, have you ever had a friend that, like, it might have been a romantic interest, something like that? Has anybody ever had something like that? Like, just say, yep, bad relationship, bad friendship, anything like that? Just go ahead and put it in the comments, because that is, I won't put your name up because I don't want anybody feeling like they're being put on blast. But that's the thing. Like, it might have been a bad relationship. It might have been a bad marriage. Unfortunately, it might have been a friendship. It could have been someone from your family. And you're saying, look, dude, I cannot follow you down this path. What you're doing does not jive with my core values. And a core value is simply a value that you hold that is so strong that you're willing to take action on it. That's how you know something is a core value. Do I value peanut M&Ms? Yep, absolutely value peanut M&Ms, and any bag that is around me within usually 20 feet gets devoured pretty fast, okay? I love peanut M&Ms, but am I going to go to war over peanut M&Ms? No, right? Someone breaks into my home and they're like, give me your peanut M&Ms. I'm like, okay, take them, right? But someone comes into my house and threatens my family. it's going to be bad, right? It's going to be bad for them. So I'm just saying, like, these are the sorts of things like that I would be willing to take action on because those are part of my core values. So this is where you can get, again, it comes from the extremes. It's easy to pick them out from your extremes. Like, do you have like an event in your life that you would love to replicate because it was so awesome? Yeah, I've got a few of those, right? And I've got a few of those other extremes that were like, oh my gosh, that was horrific. I never want to go through that again. Why was that? Because it was a violation of a core value. So I just want you to think about that. And that way you can define what the core values are and then use those experiences to help delineate what your core values are in your business. Okay. And keep in mind, it could be even just strictly in a work context. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I worked for this horrific manager and I never want to be that. Right. So think about that. All right. So those are your core values. So we talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. Now let's talk about client avatar. Your client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? All right. So if you take nothing else away from today, make sure you're spending time defining your client avatar. And it's really important that you're very specific in terms of who this person is or who these people are. It could be a person, a singular person. It could be a single, not necessarily married, or unmarried, but it could be a single woman. It could be a single male. It could be a single couple. It could be a team. It could be a board, right? A boardroom. It could be a sales team, right? Anything like that, right? So who are these people, and who are they ideally who you want to serve? Some of you are like, yeah, I really like training sales teams, okay? Or I really like, let's say like Abina, for example, you offer health or life insurance. That would be great. And say like you like working with business owners because you're able to go in and provide a death benefit to people who stay for a certain period of time, right? So there's different ways that you can structure these sorts of things, but who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? And you break them down into geographics, demographics, and psychographics, right? So the geographics is straightforward. Like geographics is where they are, demographics is who they are, and psychographics is how psycho they are, right? No, just kidding, right? No, demographics is who they are, like are they married, are they single, are they young, are they old, are they wealthy, are they poor, right? Psychographics is how they think and how they buy. So when you're breaking down the psychographics, think about this is the phrase I like to think of in terms of ALEA. Their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations, their goals, right? If I know their attitudes on certain things, do you think it'd be easier for me to reach them? Do you think if I knew what their lifestyle was like, if they were jet setting, 20 somethings who just got out of college, right? And they're going to take a year off to go backpacking. Do you think I could reach them in a certain way? Right? Yeah, they probably are reading certain magazines or on certain YouTube channels. Okay, that might make sense. If I knew their goals, if I knew that they were, say, empty nesters who really like spending time with grandkids, and I knew that was their goal, do you think I'd be able to reach them in easier ways? Right? This is how you need to start breaking them down in terms of their geographics, demographics, and psychographics. Okay, so these are the 3 C's of business vision. So out of these 3 C's, yeah, you're more than welcome, Abina. So like, out of these 3 C's, which one of these do you feel that you have really dialed in, or dialed in out of the other 2? Like which one of these 3, right? Nay, Abina, who else do we have here? Kimberly, who else? Like, what are these out of these 3? What do you feel you have the most identified? Right? Like you'd say, oh, yep, this is where I feel like I'm really good. That's great. Work from there. Work from your strengths. Okay. So yeah, go ahead and put in the chat which one of these that you actually have most dialed in. So we're going to put the fries in the bag on vision. We talked personal vision. We talked business vision. Now we're going to start getting a little bit further down the funnel, and we're going to start talking about infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is the bones of the business, right? It's the things like your desks and your chairs, your computers, your phones, your software, things like that, your websites. In the last section on marketing magic, we got into a little bit more granular stuff around CRMs, you're tracking customers and things like that. Could even be like enterprise type software, which is called like ERPs. It could be anything along those lines, right? Even websites that could be helpful. These platforms as a service. There's a lot of those sorts of systems out there right now. These are the bones of the business. So why does vision, if it's so important, Why does vision come before infrastructure? Well, here's why. Let's say, for argument's sake, that Kimberly, let's say that her vision is to lay on the beach in Spain for 2 months out of the year, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly. Okay? Well, if she designed an infrastructure that's going to require her to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to be a horrible experience for her when she's trying to lay on the beach rubbing cocoa butter on her belly, right? So this is why I want you to stop and think about this. Like, again, the personal vision is the main circuit breaker. So you're going to be developing this infrastructure that's in alignment with that vision, right? So that's you want to create that infrastructure rather that's going to be in alignment with your vision for the future. So that's why that comes first. That's why vision comes before infrastructure. So now let's look at so we got into the Viper methodology. We talked about vision. We talked about infrastructure. Let's talk about process. Process is simply how you do stuff, and process comes in two forms: it's tactical and strategic. Let's look at the tactical first and foremost. So tactical is basically how you do stuff. It's your standard operating procedures, your checklist items. It's just your day-to-day stuff. Your opening procedures, your closing procedures, things like that. It's really not that complex. But it's stuff that needs to be written down. And if you're not taking the time to write it down, you're always going to be playing from behind, because this is what you should be having your people do. Especially if you have people working for you, you should have them help define what those tasks are. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time someone comes to work for you. So that is important. Next is the tactical, if you, let me make this quick point here. I just drew a box around infrastructure and tactical process, and that is the system. That's the systems component to the Viper framework. And why that is important is because next is going to be the strategic part, but this part here is like, think of that as like the battleship. Think of that as like the warship that you just built. Okay? Well, you want to take that ship out of the harbor, right? That's what strategic planning does. Because if you don't ever strategically plan and you just leave that boat in the harbor, it's just going to get blown around by the economic winds of whatever comes along, right? It's just going to get smashed up against the dock, or it's going to get blown out to sea, never really heading in any strategic direction. That's why strategic planning is so important. So strategic planning takes in three components. It takes in people, purpose, and promotion. Now, this is not really, we're not going to get into the strategic planning side of this. That's actually a different webinar. But the people, purpose, and promotion, I'll just hit this really fast. You need to think of the different people that you need to have in your organization and outside your organization to affect your strategic plan. So you might need, obviously you might be looking at a different set of people that you're looking to attract. It could be a different market. It could be, again, a different avatar. It might be a different geography, right? So who are the people outside that you're looking to attract? And then inside, you might be thinking, well, who do I need to help me with this, right? I'm not much of a marketer. Maybe I need a marketing professional. I'm not much of a salesperson. Maybe I need some sales training, right? Whatever that is, you need to think about the different people that you need to have in the strategic planning process. Because again, if you're hoping to grow, if you're hoping to scale, you can do it way faster with help. Okay. Again, I get that there's an economic component to it. I'm just saying, if you can do this if you're planning on doing this, you can get much faster with help. So next is purpose. Purpose is, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan? Are you going to go east or north or south or west? Like, where are you going with this thing? Are you trying to gain market share, right? In the current market that you're in? Are you trying to go into a completely new market? Are you trying to launch a new product or service within your existing market, right? So there's all different ways to think about what the purpose is. And to keep in mind is that your strategic purpose has to be in alignment with what? It has to be in alignment with your core purpose. And where does core purpose come from? It comes from your 3 C's of business vision, right? You see how this is all starting to come back around? So your strategic planning, this is where you have to start thinking about this and go, okay, yeah, the strategic purpose that I'm thinking about here, yes, that has to be, that again, because it can't be confusing. It can't be like Starbucks selling chainsaws. It doesn't make sense, because the confused mind will always say no. So when you're trying to get into promotion, which is the next piece, the promotion piece is part of your advertising, part of your networking, part of your marketing. It's going to let people know that, hey, this is the thing that we're trying to do. It's kind of the firepower of the strategic plan. So when you're doing that promotion, yes, you're promoting externally to your new market, your new avatar, or your existing avatar, whoever you're promoting it to, but you're also promoting it internally, right? And that might be not necessarily just be to your employees, but it might also be to your suppliers. It might also be to your vendors, right? So you got to think about all the different pieces of promotion that you have to communicate this to, and you have to communicate to that to them often, right? So that is the strategic planning as it relates to process. So this is, again, that is the two components, both tactical and strategic, as it relates to process. So we talked about vision, we talked about infrastructure, talked about process. Now let's talk about execution. Execution has to have its own component. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that execution has to have, go ahead, right in there. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but why do you think execution has to have its own component? I'm going to go ahead and do this quote here, but why do you think, type in the comments, why you think execution has to have its own component away from everything else, okay? But here's the thing, a good plan, violently executed now, is better than the perfect plan executed next week, right? General George S. Patton, World War II general and tank commander, he did all sorts of other things. I think he was a tank commander. But he basically was a general from in World War II, and he recognized that good plans will fall apart if you're waiting for the great plan. So this is the problem, is that the most plans will fall apart in execution. So if you're going to type that, you would have been right. Most plans fall apart in execution, and it's usually from having too many priorities. And having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. So how many of you can relate to that? How many of you have that list of 37? You guys are a quiet bunch tonight. How many of you have that list of 37 or 72 to-do items on your to-do list, right? That you're going to get done today, right? Oh, yep, this is the thing I'm going to get done today. I got 37 items. I'm going to get them all done today, right? Again, I do the same thing, but I will also recognize that I'm massively ineffective when I do that. And when I do, it's because I'm not boiling them down into what I call a daily 5. Now, the daily 5 is up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which will move the needle towards your vision. Up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which will move the needle towards your vision. So I just want you to think about that. Now, for me, being a yes with distractions. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is the thing. It is distractions become this big problem. But when you can boil it down to 5, and I say up to 5, now for me, the magic number is 3. This right here is part of my daily 3. Like this session, it's letting people know what it is that I do. It's demonstrating competence. It's letting people know that that I've got some authority in an area around business and life and business strategy, right? So this is for me, this is important. So I knew I needed to make sure that I was rested well and showed up on time and all the things. And the other things that were the distractions, they didn't get done today. You know why? Because they weren't as important. They weren't as important as this. So that's why I'm saying, like, when you have all of these various things to do, by the time you get to the end of the day, if you're just spent wandering and not looking at the most important things that have to get done every single day, I'm just telling you, you're going to struggle, right? And this is how, by the way, I got 5 books published this year. This is how I'm able to effectively be in a PhD program and have a 3-year-old daughter with my bride, right? And effectively be a parent and all of those things that are important to me, right? So it's about priority, and you can't have 57 priorities. It has to be, you have to boil them down to more specific things. So that is the daily 5. The last piece in the Viper methodology is reporting. And reporting is just letting you know what happened, right? And I break them down in between lead metrics and lag metrics. And this is pretty straightforward. Lead metrics are just your actions and activities. Your lag metrics are the results of those actions and activities. So did I have any control over who showed up today? I had no control who signed up. I had no control who showed up. And I certainly don't have any control who stays. All I can control is my actions and activities. So I need to make it right? Like I need to make sure that I market the event so people show up. I always know that generally somewhere between 20 to 30% usually will show up after they sign up, right? That's just the numbers, and I know my numbers well. So, like those are the certain things that I can count on, right? Because I know my actions and activities. I can promote it. I can do all the things I can do to promote it. But at the end of the day, I don't have any control. I have indirect control over the results, but I don't have any direct control over the results. So does it mean I shouldn't measure the results at all? No, the results give the actions and activities context. So I do want to make sure that I'm measuring both, but that's the thing. If I'm not getting the results that I want, it's pretty straightforward. All I have to do is take a look at my actions and activities and adjust from there, assuming that I have enough data points. And generally, if I've got 1,000 data points, that's generally where I can start to make decisions around 1,000 to 1,500 data points, right? So that is the last piece there in terms of the Viper methodology, and we will put the fries in the bag on that. So that's the systems component. Let's talk about psychology. Psychology is so important because systems are important. Systems are really important, but systems will only get you so far because systems offer things like stability and consistency and accountability, but systems are limited in terms of making subjective decisions. They don't adapt well to market changes, especially rapid market changes. Coming up with creative solutions is not what systems are generally designed for, and they're really not great for establishing and maintaining human connections. Connections maybe, but not human connections. Not the picking up the phone and calling someone specifically, or truly giving some concern and connecting with people at a deep level. So we talked about from the beginning part, from this business approach, we talked about systems. Now we're going to talk about psychology. So when I look at psychology, I look at personal and individual psychology, and I look at business and organizational psychology. When I'm looking at personal psychology, I think of things like self-worth, self-management, and limiting beliefs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that component because that's a whole other bag of worms. But the thing is, understanding how important individual and personal psychology is when you are the one at the top of the food chain in your organization, recognizing that if you have self-worth issues or you have limiting beliefs, which we all have limiting beliefs, but if you have, especially with self-worth issues, it's going to come through and they are going to manifest in your business. So I just want to encourage you, whether that's through the use of a coach or, a therapist or something, that you're working on yourself in addition to working on your business, because that is important. And again, are any of these one things critical? Well, it's just like it's like a bicycle. It's like an airplane. All the components individually are important, right? For various reasons. But when you're looking at the business psychology, you're looking at external and internal business psychology, and that's the organizational psychology. So let's break that down between external and internal. External psychology and internal psychology. When you're looking at external, you're thinking about things like buyers and vendors, that, in terms of like vendor negotiations and things like that. Even, understanding, like I said, buying psychology, understanding the negotiations, and even politics. Politics comes into play when you're looking and talking about business psychology from an external perspective. Internally, you're looking at things like management and things like leadership. And leadership is what I'm going to be focusing on, because leadership is probably one of the best ways that all of that stuff comes together if you've got good leadership. The way that I look at leadership, and it's interesting because in organizational psychology, it all comes back to leadership. And I've read a lot, and I'm sure I'm going to be reading a lot more about different aspects of leadership, which is interesting, but it all comes back to these three pillars, that if you don't have these three pillars and all three of these pillars, you will not be effective as a leader, and you might not even know why. But here's the three pillars. They are trust, vision, and communication. And every leader, and every time I see like this list of leadership traits, or I see this leadership theory model, and I look at that and I'm like, okay, is there a hole that can be punched into any of these three? Is there a fourth one? Can it be boiled down to two, right? Whatever. It keeps coming back to these three. It's trust, vision, and communication. If people don't trust you, they will not follow you. They will follow you because they have to. That's it. You are, as John Maxwell called that was a very positional leader. It's the lowest level of leadership. And if people don't trust you, it's only because they're following you because they have to. And that's it. And that is, you're never going to get people to do anything more than just show up and give the bare minimum effort. And that's what it is, right? That's the trust part of that. So you might have a compelling vision, right? Really know where the organization is going and where you want to lead them, and you might be an excellent communicator. But if they don't trust you, you're going to be ineffective as a leader. Maybe they have your trust. Maybe you've earned their trust, and you are an excellent orator. You can communicate well, and you do it often. But if you don't have a real vision in terms of where you're taking them, they're not going to follow you anywhere. They're going to wonder why they're there. What's the mission? What are we trying to do here? Again, you're not going to be as effective as a leader as you could be. And that last piece, let's say you've got their trust. Let's say you've got a really compelling vision, but you're a horrible communicator, right? You use foul language and that doesn't really resonate with the people that you're leading. Maybe you are, maybe you scream at people. Maybe you type in all caps, on everything that you send out. Maybe you just don't communicate often enough and you're a lousy communicator. Again, you're not going to be effective as a leader as you could be. I've run this through many, many different scenarios, and it keeps coming back to these three: and trust, vision, and communication. I do a whole leadership thing around this. I'm going to have to put that to bed. But here's the thing. Does leadership really even matter that much? Well, I'm writing my next book called The Time Wealthy Leader Boss, and the Leader Boss is based on these two premises here around caring versus candor. And if you have ever tried to lead people and you're like, oh man, I'm just too nice. I really need to be more of a jerk, right? That is because you're too caring and you don't have enough candor. You're not telling them the truth. So it's almost like caring versus kindness, right? But when you're too caring, people will like you, right? But they will walk all over you because you don't have enough caring. You're not bringing enough candor to the conversation. However, if you bring too much candor and not enough caring, people are like, yeah, all they care about is making money. They don't care about me, right? You're going to hear things like that. And that is when people feel like you're a tyrant and they will give you only the effort that they want to and not one bit more. There's no extra discretionary effort being given, right? They will show up on time. They'll leave on time. Don't ask them to do one thing more. Never ask them to work on a Saturday, right? Never ask them to work a little bit late to get something done. Right, or call them at home, on a weekday, right? If you had a question about something, right? So you've got to have equal parts of caring versus candor, and that's going to be the main premise in my next book. But it is absolutely appropriate to have equal parts of this. And these level 5 leader companies, this was something that was a level 5 leader as defined by Jim Collins, and John Maxwell has also talked about a level 5 leader. Slightly different definitions, but they use the same phrase of level 5 leader. It basically means a highly effective leader, one that have excellent leadership traits that really put the organization and the mission in front of their needs. So that's basically what a level 5 leader is. And these level 5 leader companies that was identified by John Maxwell in books like Good to Great, Great by Choice, Built to Last. These level 5 leader companies, they were significantly more profitable. They grew much faster, and they had a stronger company culture. And guess what? They had defined core values. Their core values were very well defined. Everybody knew what they were, and they were held accountable to those core values. So these are the important things that I want you to start to think about, is about how important leadership is. And this is just a quick example. These are 4 companies: Amgen, Intel, Microsoft, and Southwest. And you can look and see how fast they grew in just 30 years, right? Amgen, 24 times more than the overall stock market. That's crazy growth. Look at Southwest Airlines, 63 times of the overall market. That's crazy kind of growth, and that's because they had outstanding leadership. And one other quick thing is the 100 best places to work list frequently represents the companies that have the highest stock returns. So when you are looking for this, the reason why they're almost always making the best places to work list is because they have good leadership and good management, right? So leadership makes a huge difference. And that's because growth necessitates change. It requires change to happen. And leadership is what manages that change. And I hear this all the time, like, man, how do I get my people to care as much as I do? Or, I feel like it should be further along in my business. You probably have a leadership problem, and it's probably starting with you. Okay. So I want you to make one final thing to remember here is that the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. If you are an individual that generally takes a long time to make decisions, your company will suffer. And the reason for that is the team cannot go faster than the leader. It won't work. It doesn't happen. So I want you to think about that. You might have to get a little bit more comfortable making decisions faster than you currently are. Because if you take forever to make decisions, or someone brings something to you and you're thinking about it, but you're not really taking action on it, that can be very, very frustrating for people who work for you. Okay. So just think about that. All right. So that is the business approach. We talked about systems and we talked about psychology. So that is the first two pieces of the agenda here, systems, psychology. Now let's talk about the 4 core functions of business. And these are true for every business. There's no getting around it. And those 4 core functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your client's journey through your company happens in that order. So don't forget that, is that when they're coming through your organization, they're coming through your organization because they've experienced your lead generation in some way. They might have experienced, let me know in the comments, what kind of lead generation things are you doing? Are you doing advertising? Are you doing networking, right? What's your primary? What kind of primary things are you doing for your marketing? Are you doing networking? Are you doing advertising? Are you doing social media direct response type posts where you say, hey, here's my thing. If you're interested, do this thing, right? Click here, comment here, send me a DM, something. That's called direct response. Do you rely more on SEO, right? Which is more what's basically called inbound traffic, right? You're looking for inbound type marketing where people go and search you on Google and then they're like, okay, cool. This person sells this type of insurance in Delaware. Cool. Like that's what I'm looking for, right? Let me know, like what kind of lead generation are you doing? Go ahead and type it in the comments. Having difficult with that one. Okay. Well, and that's okay. I mean, like, again, this is the sort of thing that you can't fix something that you're not aware of that is broken. And you taking the time and recognizing, like, again, now, recognizing that you have an issue is the first step to actually fixing that issue. But if you've got lead generation dialed in and people are coming to you, now you've got a sales issue, right? These people are now in the sale. They're now in your atmosphere. They're like, hey, I've raised my hand. I'm kind of interested in what it is that you have. Let's talk about it. So now you can start to talk about the sales side of things. And the sales conversation is just closing that loop that lets people know, like, okay, you're a serious buyer, right? Then once it's closed, then it goes into the operation and fulfillment function. That operations and fulfillment function, then it is what it does, the thing, whatever the thing is, right? Whatever you might be a website maker or a roofer or, candlestick maker or whatever it is, right? And then finally is the accounting function, which is where it collects the money and does all of the financial stuff, like with the balance sheet and income statement and so forth. So this is where I want you to think about the 4 core functions have to be true in every single business. All right, so let's talk about scaling and having some controlled growth, and growth that's not going to metastasize into something terrible. So lead generation is about targeting that client avatar. Now, where have you heard client avatar before? Where have you heard client avatar before? Take a sip here. You've heard client avatar in business vision, right? The 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, client avatar. When you get the replay, or if you want to go back to YouTube, you'll see that in your business vision. That's exactly right, Abina. So this is where I'm saying, like, you start targeting your client avatar that you defined back in your business vision. So if you don't have a well-defined client avatar, if you're just like, well, anybody who needs insurance, anybody who needs to buy real estate, anybody who needs to buy a car, that's going to be tricky, right? But if you can get it dialed in to who you want to work for specifically, it's going to be a lot easier to direct your marketing towards them. You can have a conversation with anyone. You just can't have a conversation with everyone. It's kind of difficult. So think about that. So when you have a client avatar well defined, you know exactly who you want to work with, and it's much easier for you to direct your marketing to. Plus, it's clients that'll bring the most amount of money with the least amount of drama. And these are the people who will love you. These are the people who refer to you. These are people who will send you other friends and family and things like that. So again, what I want to do is I'm going to give you these 15 reasons why people buy. And I'm going to go ahead and take myself out of the frame here for just a second. But these 15 reasons why people buy, what I want you to do is take a screenshot with these 15 reasons. And assuming that you have your client avatar already defined, if you have not defined your client avatar, you can't do this exercise yet. But if you've got your client avatar well defined and you know exactly who they are, geographically, demographically, psychographically, you can picture them in your mind. Maybe you have a couple clients that were already like that, right? You probably know someone like that on your list. And this is where you can start to farm them for some information, not to sell to them, but to start to farm them for information about how you can reach other people. And these are the reasons why they're going to want to buy from you. People are going to want to buy because they want to make money. They want to save money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain. It might be emotional pain. It could be physical pain. It could be spiritual pain, right? They want more comfort in their life. They want better health. And sometimes better health comes in the form of less stress. They want to feel more love. They want to gain praise. They want to increase their status among the people in their tribe. They will buy for truth. And they will buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. They will buy for growth. They will buy for, and that could be growth in their knowledge, growth in their faith, growth in their muscles, right? Whatever. It could be for, they'll buy for novelty just because something is new. Some of you out there have to have the latest iPhone just because it's new. I respect that. That's not me. I have a normal phone. I don't have an iPhone. But in more control, they'll buy for more control, more perceived control, and they will buy to be in contribution to others. So these are all the reasons why people will buy. So how does this relate to you and the price of tomatoes is that when you are coming up with this list and you've written this list down, what I want you to do is I want you to take this list and I want you to think of all the ways directly and indirectly that you help people save money or make money. Start with make money. I want you to think of all the ways that people, directly or indirectly, your product or service helps them make money, directly or indirectly. And then I want you to do that with saving money. How do you, in your product or service, help them save money directly or indirectly? How does your product or service directly or indirectly help them save time, avoid effort, right? Making things easy, right? Escaping pain. I want you to do that for all 15 of these. And you're going to come up with some kooky, crazy answers, and that's okay. But you're going to come up with some real zingers. And the reason why, like, this was such an important exercise for me is because when I stopped and I got really into thinking like, well, what do I do here in Strategic Boardroom? Like, what do I do as a strategist? I'm really about time, teaching people to be time wealthy, have control over their calendars. That's true. But what do I ultimately do? Well, I do educate, but ultimately, okay, so I educate them, but for what, right? Okay, do I save them time? Do I save them money? Well, yeah, I save them a lot of time because they don't have to read and research all the stuff that I have read and researched. So when I see an issue that they have, I can pull out a piece of research or a book that I have read or something along those lines, and I can say, hey, have you considered this approach, right? So for them, it saves a lot of time because they don't have the time like I do devoted to my education. And that's what I do. I save them time by educating them. So I take them into a classroom, and then I take them from the classroom to the boardroom. And the boardroom is where we apply the strategy. Does that make sense? And I could never have gotten to this level of clarity unless or until I went through this exercise. And I've been going through this exercise continually for like the last 4 years. And every month and every week and every day, I get a little more clear on it. And that's what I'm saying. So really want you to spend the time going through this exercise. So that is the 15 reasons why people will buy. And that exercise is really important for your lead generation. Every function that you have and everything that you do needs to support your lead generation function. Because here is some honest truth. You can have the best, most efficient business It could be a paragon of virtue. You could sell ice to Eskimos because your sales technique is so dialed in, and you could sell voting booths to Castro, and you could still starve. You can never, ever take your foot off the gas when it comes to your lead generation. It's just the way it is. And especially if you're trying to grow, you're looking at lead generation activities that's going to be somewhere between 60 to 70% minimum. Minimum. This is not 60 to 70% ideal. That means if you're working a 10-hour day, that means 6 to 7 hours of your day are based around lead generation activities. That's just the way it is. And that is, you got to be out there shaking hands, kissing babies, basically running for mayor. Okay. And metaphorically, you don't have to necessarily leave your home, but you've got to be in touch with lots of different people who know what it is that you do. Okay. So this is where your lead generation activities really need to be peaking. So the sales conversation, as I mentioned earlier, this continues the conversation that was started by the lead generation function. And it also understands that effective selling is not about punching people in the mouth until they say yes. This is about finding effective solutions, finding solutions for what they need. And I know there's a lot of sales trainers out there that are just like, take no prisoners and just don't take no for an answer, and really just, overcoming objections and doing all this stuff, man. For those of you who are interested, I don't have it this week. I will probably do it next week though, but I have a one-to-one selling for people who hate one-to-one selling. I have I'll have that up probably next week, probably for Monday or Tuesday, but you can just keep an eye on Eventbrite. But the thing is that if you've set the stage, set the buying environment right up front, you don't have to overcome all these objections and learn how to sell and be like super aggressive. Like, you don't have to do that. That's not my style anyway. And I don't even like that. I don't like that style applied to me. So, but once you understand how to sell and how to sell well and do it by just finding solutions, and if your solutions happen to match up with what they need and it's in budget, it's pretty much a no-brainer, right? So that's about effective selling. If you are in the operational function, generally, if you're going to get stuck, this is where you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck, being the roofer or being the baker or being the candlestick maker, whatever it is. That's where you're going to end up getting stuck. And that's very true for a lot of people. In the accounting function, on the other hand, if you're going to ignore something, generally it's the accounting function that gets ignored. And it goes something like this. Well, I've got more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. Okay, so I have a degree in accounting, and I have said those very words. So no judgment if that is you. I'm just letting you know that if that's something that, if you're going to ignore something, generally it's the accounting function. So let me ask you something. Are all all of these things the same skill set? No, of course they're not the same skill set. That's why you need to be looking for people who align with your core values. And that is going to be the main difference when you're bringing people into your organization. Again, we talked about growing, and this is, if you're looking to grow, you're bringing people into your organization. You could grow by addition, which is you taking on additional tasks and doing the things and trying to bring on additional, additional hacks and pieces of software that'll let you grow a little bit. That's growing by addition, or growing by multiplication by bringing in good quality hires that are in alignment with your core value. And especially if you really want to grow by multiplication or even grow exponentially, bring in a leader. Start hiring leaders. Remember the analogy that I used about hiring the 17-year-old versus hiring the 37-year-old? Not that the 37-year-old was intrinsically better, but the 37-year-old likely has more established and well-maintained contacts than the 17-year-old. Not always, but generally that's a fairly safe bet. And if they are a true leader in their organization or in their climate, wherever they happen to be, then you're going to get growth by multiplication. So you want to grow quickly, start to bring in and develop leaders in your organization. So those are the main areas around the strategic business growth, like these areas. So there's probably some areas that you think that you have to grow in, some areas that you have to work on. Many people have to work on those 3 C's. Some people realize that they're not as strong, or they haven't really developed those reasons why people will buy from them, right? They don't have a really good marketing function. But if you want to grow, you've got to have the right systems in place. There's just no getting around that. You've got to have great leadership. And if you have not developed yourself as a great leader, please don't let this be the only place that you look and learn for leadership growth. There's plenty of other places. I like John Maxwell, but I think he gets very repetitive in some of his books. Look for other people who have written stuff on leadership. There was a book called The Leadership Challenge by Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. It is an absolute, it reads like a textbook, but it is probably one of the best books I have ever read on leadership, and I have read many. So I'm just letting you know, don't curse me. It reads like a textbook, but it's very, very, very good. Probably one of the best, like I said, books on leadership. And again, I don't have time to unpack that right now, but he breaks down this very simple framework, this 5-component framework to leadership, which again, I think is really, really good. And then the next piece is, again, your lead generation actions have to be 60 to 70% of your overall activity, not just lead generation activity. Like, you have to spend 60 to 70% minimum if you're looking to grow. And then finally, hire and develop leaders. Develop these leaders inside your organization. As you develop as a leader, then you'll be developing them as leaders as well, right? So go to leadership conferences, take them with you, and help them grow in their leadership as you're growing in yours. So the final piece here is just some different resources. I asked you in the beginning, seeking knowledge to understand versus seeking knowledge to take action. I'm going to offer you a couple things here. So what I want you to do, just go ahead and type maybe 1 or 2 things that you will commit to taking action on. I think it was Abina. You were the only one who committed. But if you did learn something tonight, I would ask you, write down what are the 1 or 2 things that you're going to commit to taking action on. So flip through your notes if you took any. I know some of you might be driving. That's okay. Just be safe. I'll just assume that you're not able to type, but go ahead and type in the 1 or 2 things that you're going to commit to taking action on. And I'm just going to go on to the next couple of slides here. So if you are interested in this type of conversation, and I've got a community of people who are business owners, and they are literally all over the place. They're literally all over the world, which is actually kind of cool. I up till fairly recently, I was mostly US centric, but now I'm starting to get people all over the place reaching out to me for help, which is super humbling. And I really am very humbled by this, but I've got this school community. If you would be interested in being part of it, right now, there is no cost to join. So there really is no reason to not join. Let me get this copied, and I will get that over to you. I'm going to put that in the comments section, and you guys are able to join that right there. Okay, there's that. So just go ahead and click on that link if you'd like to join that. And like I said, there's not going to be any fee. All right. So Abina, you had said the 3 C's of business. Yeah, that is a foundational one. I mean, really taking the time and start with whichever one you think, don't necessarily start at the weakest one. If maybe start at the one that's the best and start to work on that a little bit, and you'll start to get your core purpose and or your core values or your client avatar. You'll start to figure the other ones out a little bit more as you spend those time, but as you spend the time, but have the awareness of okay, I feel like this is the one that I'm best at. If anything's ranking from a 1 to a 10, if anything's ranking a 7 or below, that's probably the one that's, you probably need some work on. But I would rank them 1 to 10, all of them, and work on the one that is probably the best, just to give you a little bit of traction to start working on the others that maybe you're weak at. Maybe you've got others that are just a 2 or 3. Okay. So that would be where I would suggest starting out. Well, thank you everybody for sticking around. This has been a lot of fun. This is, again, one of my more favorite things to teach is the Strategic Business Growth Multiplier. Again, that is the school community. Again, you can find me on school.com/strategic boardroom. All right, everybody, that is all I have. Thank you so very much for sticking around. I will see you next time, and I'll see you in the boardroom.